Welcome to the Dr. Geo podcast. I am your host, Dr. Geo, where it is my full intention to help you improve and optimize your prostate health and help you live better with age. Today's podcast is on successful aging. Successful aging. How do we age successfully? I gave a talk not that long ago, a few weeks ago, in Connecticut to a group of naturopathic physicians on this topic of male aging, right? And the way where we need to start is, of course, defining aging, right? And the reason why you want to define aging well is because you need to know what you're shooting for. You need to know your target. If not, if it's too nebulous, you're not going to do much with that, right? And I think it's very important to be sort of targeted as to what is if you watch sports and watch things like football and basketball, you know about Tom Brady, for example, who at age 45 played high level football, right? LeBron James, who currently is arguably one of the best player, if not the best player in the history of basketball, and he's like 38 years old doing amazing things. Is that genetics? Or is it that they do things to function at a high level, at a physical high level as they age, right? Because you know they are about 80 years old in sports years and in basketball and football years, aren't they? Right. So it's important to know what we're targeting for, right? So what is the definition of aging? Well, if you look at the World Health Organization, WHO, it's still nebulous, right? So the way they define it is the accumulation. So aging is the accumulation of a great variety of molecular and cellular alterations over time, which leads to a gradual decrease in physical capacities and mental disorders, and increased risk of disease and ultimately death. What? What? What is that? Right? So if you listen to that definition, which I know what it means, but to me is not clear. And even if it's clear, to me, it's not something worthwhile aiming for. So the way I would break down aging is two ways. One is pathological aging, right? So pathology. So this idea of, yep, you can live longer and you're living to whatever age, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but constantly plagued by disease, constantly plagued by the inability to function well, move around well, and perhaps to some degree have to depend on others to take care of you, right? Which is exactly what I think you and I are trying to avoid. Now, I have to say, despite anyone's definition, this is sort of, I think, my definition of aging, and you may have your own. But can we agree that hopefully my definition is not too far off from yours? And again, it gives you something to aim for, right? Something to work for, right? So successful aging to me means the maintenance of physical and mental well-being, right? Where you are physically and mentally able to do the things you want to do when you want to do it, being functionally independent of others in the absence of chronic disease, right? So you lower your risk of heart disease and diabetes and cancer and Alzheimer's and dementia. You lower the risk. By the way, that's a very important point. We're not eliminating the risk with anything, but we're significantly lowering the risk. And if you do get a disease of some point, right? Because despite what you do, again, we're lowering the risk. We're not eliminating the risk. You should have the ability to adapt to that change successfully so that you can still do many of the things that you want to do, right? With time and age. And then you should have the ability to compensate for any limitations that may occur. Let's just say you fall down and break a leg, right? You should recover from that successfully with time, physical therapy, surgery, and recover from that, right? So it's not only the absence of disease. Sure, we want to avoid disease if we can, no question, right? but it's also how do we function at an optimal level, both mentally. If there's one thing that you guys have told me over and over again, patients and so forth have told me is I really don't. I don't want to have dementia. I don't want to lose my ability to my cognition to decline and to lose my memory. I'm really. I rather. I rather have my legs amputated. This is what many people say. I'm not saying this is your way of thinking, but this is what many people I've spoken to have said. Um, they want to function optimally, both mentally and physically. Me, I tell you, one of my goals is my personal. This doesn't have to be your goal, by the way. All right. So, but I do want you to define what is your goal as you age, as you become, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. Right. What's the goal? My goal is, so my eldest is 19 years old, so I don't think if she has kids, and there's no pressure from dad, but if she does, let's just say she'll have kids maybe at 30 years old. I'm pulling that number out of the air completely. So 11 years from now, at that point, I'll be 61, maybe. Yeah, no, not maybe, 61. Then 15 years later, I'll be 75, and my eldest grandchild, again, this plan may not work out at all the way I planned, but let's just say I'll be 75 with my eldest grandkid is 15 years old, and I want to play pickup basketball game with my grandchildren, right? I want to certainly go hiking with my family, all my family members. I want to meet them where they go, as they say, right? If they go hiking, I want to meet them there and go with them there. I want to go wherever they go. If they are living far away from me, I want to get into airplanes, no problem, carry my luggage, put it over the overhead compartment, no problem, for as long as possible, right? So that's my personal goal. I certainly don't want to be on. My personal goal is not to be on any pharmaceutical drug. Now, I have to say there are many pharmaceutical drugs that are helpful. And if you need them, like some people are on blood pressure medication, and if you need them, it works very well, right? And there's no shame in taking that. But I don't want to be taking, 8, 9, 10 medications if I can avoid it. If I have to, of course I will. But if I can avoid it with lifestyle measures and things, I don't want to. I certainly want to be living. Let's just start there. And I would like to be living for as long as I can with optimal functionality, both mental and physical, right? And lastly, I really don't want to be codependent on anyone, any family member, any loved one. That's a big one for me, right? I don't want to be dependent in any way on anyone. So those are my goals. What are yours? How do you define successful aging? Is successful aging somewhat similar to what my definition is? Maybe, maybe you have your own definition. Maybe you can add on to that, but don't make it too long, because then it's too much to reach for. Like most goals, they need to be concise and right to the point. So what I would suggest is, all right, here's the goal, and here's how I would age successfully. Now, I do a lot of things to that can increase my risk of injury. Now, as I get older, I'm more careful, but I participate in sports. I participate in martial arts. I'm riding bicycles, um, and I participate in physical activities, and I don't plan to stop that. With that comes some risk. So part of my lifestyle is to reduce the risk of any injury. Again, it doesn't eliminate the risk, it reduces the risk. And of course, I want to lower that risk and continue doing the things that I love to do. So that's me, because I want to do things that make me happy. What are the things that you want to do as you age that will make you happy, so that you can age successfully and actually do better with age, right? Do better with age. So that was a part of the conversation with my colleagues. And then I sort of broke it down, right? what are we trying to accomplish here, right? At a physical level, at a cellular level, what are we trying to accomplish? Well, in my research with aging, and again, a lot of it that I focus on is on male aging, but I think a lot of it can be helpful for females as well. So, one of the things is, and the way I presented it was that possibly aging is a muscle problem. A muscle problem. What do I mean? What do I mean? How can aging be a muscle problem? Here's what I mean. And I'm gonna break this down for you as if you are in a biology class, and it's gonna be like a fifth grade biology class. Not because um, I don't think you are smart, and I don't want to undermine your intelligence in any way. But if you've never taken biology, or it's been a while, you want to keep it simple. All right. In our bodies, there are three muscle types. There is smooth muscle, there is cardiac muscle, and there's skeletal muscle. Right. So the smooth muscles, and a lot of it is the sort of the architecture of each tissue, and that's part of and location. Right. So smooth muscles are found muscles of the bladder, uh, muscles of your blood vessels. Your blood vessels are smooth muscles. Your part of your prostate is a smooth muscle. Lungs, penis, the penile muscles are smooth muscles, right? So those are the smooth muscles, and I'm sure there's others. Then it's the cardiac muscle; those are heart muscles. And then you have your skeletal muscles. These are the muscles that are attached to your bones, where now you can move, right? You can move your body. Those are the three muscle types. In my experience and in my research, damage to the muscles are one of the biggest problems in aging. For example, high blood pressure. That's a blood vessel problem, isn't it? And that's a smooth muscle. High blood pressure, blood pressure. Um, urinary problems. That's typically a bladder problem or a prostate problem or both. Erectile dysfunction. That's oftentimes could be a muscle problem. Inability to breathe properly, or what's called low VO2 max. That's a smooth muscle problem, right? Then you have the cardiac muscles, which can be, so a lot of the cardiac muscles are oftentimes caused by blood vessels. So let's say there's a plaque in the artery, so that's a smooth muscle problem. But the cardiac muscle itself can, if it's damaged from a heart attack, or just cardiomyopathy, right? Different problems with the muscles of the heart that can cause cardiovascular problems. Then you have the skeletal muscles that, if you're not careful, that muscle wasting, or sarcopenia, which is the medical term for natural muscle wasting, occurs. And then what happens there, you have metabolic problems. So this is where you have, where you eat something and you metabolically don't take care of what you eat. Your body's not efficient in what it does with what you eat. And so that you develop insulin problem, insulin resistance, diabetes, which leads to inflammation and other things. The studies are very clear that sarcopenia is a major cause of pathological aging, right? So you want to keep as much muscle as possible as you age. So I think that in part, and then when you have muscle problems, skeletal, doesn't matter, then it leads to other problems. It can, because you have metabolic problems, that can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's. That can lead to cancer. That can lead to a heart attack, right? So I do think that keeping strong muscles, all three, is a major component of aging successfully. So that is that. All right, what do we do about it? How do we keep good muscle? How do we keep good smooth muscles? How do we keep uh, good cardiovascular muscles? And how do we keep good skeletal muscle? Right. So you cannot talk about particularly skeletal muscles without talking about testosterone in men. Right. So the idea here is, and by the way, I have great results with a recent small study in a herbal formula. So stay tuned. I'm just whetting your appetite here. There's an herbal formula that I'm looking to formulate that might might increase testosterone, and not only increase total testosterone, but increase free testosterone. So stay tuned. Testosterone is an important chemical to keep muscle. Now, a lot of you listening, or some of you listening, probably many of you listening, are on androgen deprivation therapy where your testosterone is depleted intentionally for medical reasons for prostate cancer, right? So many of you don't have testosterone levels at a decent amount. I understand. No worries. Okay? Because the way you keep skeletal muscle, right? So testosterone does have an effect on skeletal muscle, is testosterone, weightlifting, and proper protein consumption. So when you don't have testosterone, you have to bank on protein intake and weight resistant exercise. If you're not on ADT or androgen deprivation therapy, then you want good testosterone levels, and then you want good free testosterone because it does stimulate skeletal muscle production. And I would suggest when you get the conversation I want you to have with your physician is that they need to figure out how much free testosterone you have. Dr. Gio, why do I need to ask my physician to look for free aren't they doing that already? Isn't that part of the panel? It may or may not be. The deal is that oftentimes they just order for total testosterone, which doesn't tell you much, honestly. In order for you to know if you have low testosterone, you have to measure free testosterone, and the amount of the percentage free testosterone that you need is about 2 to 2.5% free testosterone. Okay. And it doesn't matter how much total you have. If it's not 2 to 2.5%, it's not happening. And oftentimes, because the insurance companies don't pay or don't want to pay for free testosterone levels, or they don't pay for the treatments, all the insurance companies pay for when your testosterone level is below 300. Period. End of story. Okay. So, and this is part of the problem. This is a systemic medical problem. So, oftentimes, it's not necessarily your physician, is the insurance companies that dictate what physicians do. That's I don't want I don't want to jump on a soapbox with the medical system and what's happening in medicine, but that's kind of what's happening. Bottom line is that you need to know how much free testosterone you have. Again, this is for those that are not on ADT. Okay. And there are many ways to optimize and increase testosterone. Stay tuned. I do have a podcast coming up on an episode coming up on testosterone with an expert, Dr. Mohit Kara. And I have another one on natural approaches for increase in testosterone that we're going to take a deeper dive in. Okay. But you need the takeaway here is that you need proper free testosterone levels. Okay. The other is you need, and by the way, there's the 9 hallmarks on aging, right? And that includes several things. That includes genetics, right? So yeah, you can have a predisposition to a genetic to a disease. You may have a genetic predisposition to a disease, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you will get the disease. And this is where proper lifestyle and natural approaches may be helpful, right? Because there's this other component in terms of the 9 hallmarks called epigenetics. And epigenetics implies that the environmental things that you are exposed to, including perhaps things that you consume, may have an impact on your genetic risk. In other words, there are some things that may um, light up your genetic risk to cancer, let's just say, or prostate. If you have a genetic predisposition to cancer, but there is no epigenetic elements that will trigger that disease, let's say for cancer, then you lower your risk of getting cancer. But now, if you have a genetic predisposition, and have also exposed yourself to all kinds of environmental, whether it's the air that you breathe, that is perhaps with toxic element, the food that you consume, low exercise, not sleeping well, things like that, that will probably start the cancer process in your body, which you don't want. That's the same thing for cardiovascular disease, same thing for Alzheimer's, same thing for everything. So there's an epigenetic component to all these things. The other thing is mitochondrial health. That's another hallmark. So mitochondria is this part of you learned it in probably grammar school as the powerhouse of the cell, and that was sort of it, right? But it turns out that this is new form of medicine, if you will, called mitochondrial medicine, where this particular, it's called organelle of the cell, is powerful in terms of your aging process, because the mitochondria gives you energy, right? It gives you energy to do things and to keep you functioning and well. And if there's mitochondrial dysfunction, then you're less likely to function properly and well and optimally. So keeping your mitochondria healthy is really important, right? And we'll stop there, but those are the main elements of the hallmarks of aging. Telomeres is another one, right? The telomeres are like the ends of a shoelace. The longer the plastic part, the longer the telomere, the healthier you are. That's another hallmark. So anyway, all right. So what do we do? Right? What do we do? Um, from a lifestyle perspective, the four key elements to, actually, there's probably five. There is nutrition and the food you eat, and the food you don't eat, and how much you eat. There is nutraceutical supplements and dietary supplements. That's probably part of the nutritional component. Then there's exercise. Then there's sleep. And then there's community. Your engagement with others, with people. Your ability to engage with people. When you look at the blue zones, which these are areas, the 5 areas around the world where there's a high number of people that live to be 100 or more, a big component of it, all the diets are different. Some of the diets are not great. And when you look at people that live, centenarians, right, that live over 100, some of them smoke. They don't have great diets all the time, but they have community. That is one commonality, community, right? So interaction with others. One of the main things that I think that the pandemic uh, really, how it harmed people is when people were enclosed in their homes for so long. I think that really caused an impact, right? Don't you think? I think that caused an impact on people and people's health, right? So community is another one. All right, I throughout uh, many episodes in the past, we've spoken about diet in some detail, exercise in some detail. So I want to give you an overview here, specifically on how to and specifically for aging successfully. Is that cool? Is that all right with you? I mean, I just want you to do something today, and I want you to prioritize, because I'm going to say a lot of things, perhaps, and you say, "Oh God, where do I start?" Well, you're going to start in the area that you're most challenged with. Is where you're going to start. You're going to start. You're going to do one thing of everything I'm going to say right now, just one that's really going to start that process for you in terms of, you know, aging successfully and keeping your cells healthy and these muscles working properly. So, and there is no, it's not in any order per se. Well, let me take that back. All the four elements that I'm talking about, including engagement with other people and things and family and friends, they're all important. But I am gonna tell you in some sort of descending order of importance. So if you need to start, what's the number one thing? Now this is difficult, right? As I always say, it's like it's like right. It's like asking me, which one of your three kids you love most. I love them all. No, 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 no. Which one of your three kids you love most? No, well, you got to tell me, right? So it's not that one is better than the other necessarily, but it might be to some degree, to a very small degree, but all four are important. So here we go. If you got to start with one thing, one change to age successfully, nothing else for now, right? To start with, it is exercise, physical exercise. And I think that it involves both weight resistant exercise. So you have to push and pull heavy things for a certain amount of repetitions, anywhere between 6 to 12 repetitions, right? Because what that does is it stimulates and keeps mitochondrial health healthy, particularly the more weight you push and pull intelligently without injury. And it keeps muscles. You keep muscle and you keep strength, physical strength. Studies are very clear that stronger people are, the less they die. Just physical strength, pure strength, right? So physical exercise. If you don't sleep well, if you love to eat and you love to eat crappy food, I would suggest for you not to eat crappy food. But you know what? You got to start somewhere. Physical exercise. So that includes weight resistant exercise, weight training, push and pull heavy things, and cardiovascular for about 30 minutes at about a heart rate of anywhere, 120, 180 minus your age, give or take. So if you're in really good health, is 180 minus your age, add 10 points to that, and you want your heart rate to be there for 30 minutes, or just 180 over minus your age, and that's it. Or if you're not in great physical shape, on a lot of pharmaceutical medications, then it's 180 minus your age, and then take another 10 points off, and that should be your heart rate. So figure that out for yourself. But the bottom line is 30 to 60 minutes of some cardiovascular, rowing, on a treadmill, going for walks around the park, which is actually better. Right, get some sunlight. That's helpful. So physical exercise. If you need to start somewhere, that's where you need to start. The next thing, again, it's hard to prioritize. All important, but we have to start somewhere. Is sleep. Now, sleep for some of you is very difficult, but I tell you this: I find that a lot of it is behavioral. I really do. You know the amount of people that are in their gadgets, their electric devices, and scrolling down on different things whilst laying in bed. I would argue that's probably the first thing to stop doing and stop that habit, and do that's one of the first things to resolve is electric devices, exposure to electric devices while you're laying in bed, right? And there are podcast episodes on sleep. I won't get much. And Dr. Geo, listen, folks, if you're not part of the, if I don't have your email on the drgeo.com newsletter, shame on you. No, I don't want to shame you. Just kidding. But I do send information through my email list that you're not going to get anywhere else. So go ahead and sign up to the drgeo.com newsletter. It's right on drgeo.com. In any event, sleep. So figure out how you may have sleep apnea and you may need a CPAP. And I know it's too uncomfortable. Look, everybody gets over it. It's everything is about trade-off. If you want to live better and you want to age successfully, it's trade-off. So yeah, this darn machine that I need to wear, okay, but you're going to wake up more refreshed. You're going to sleep better. You're going to breathe better while you're sleeping. So figure out what your sleep issues are and go get it. Then third is diet. And when I talk about diet, it's really mostly how not to eat so much. And that's the first part of that conversation. The first thing is to eat less, because we all eat too much. Before we start talking about eat this way and eat like that, and I don't, diets become like political affiliations, right? And it starts separating people, and diets become like religion. We don't want that. I don't want that, right? There's a cultural component to how we eat. There's an engagement component of how we eat, where people get together, which again is very important. So if food brings people together, I don't want to get into some diet, or people getting into diets where people are not getting together, or for diet to be in any way a form of a form of people not engaging. So there are, again, much information on drgeo.com and on the podcast episodes on diet, but the first thing you need to do is just eat less. Eat less. You may not need more than 2 meals a day, unless you do, because you're malnourished. And yes, that's why some dietary guidelines are important, because you need to be nourished when you eat. But just start by eating less. Okay. And engagement. So engagement is fourth on the list, because if you're not healthy and you don't feel good about yourself, you don't want to engage with others. And if you start having too many dietary restrictions, it's going to be harder to engage with people. Right? And if you're not sleeping well, you're more irritable. So who wants to be with you? Who wants to be hanging around with you if you're irritable? No, yeah, I know. Seriously. So that's why those three things are more, it's in some level of priority. And it, from with exercise and through exercise, guys, listen, you get a lot of bang for your buck. I'm never going to ask you to love exercise. Some of you will never even like it. I am asking you to do it anyway. And you don't need to be motivated to get going. Just go. Just go every day, do something physical for 10 to 30 to 60 minutes a day. Because the reality is, guys, look, the number one thing that you care about most, because you've told me and I'm listening, is you want to spend more good quality moments with the people you love. Isn't that what you're trying to accomplish? So let's get to it, right? Aging is a sport. So you want to train yourself like LeBron James and Tom Brady for their sport. You want to train yourself to age successfully. It's not going to come easy. You have to do the work. It's not like when we were 25 years old that you could go all night drinking, wake up, no problem, go to work, no. You have to make conscious decisions day to day and then little by little, and have your goal in mind, have your successful aging definition in mind daily. So it's not only about instant gratification, it's how I'm going to live tomorrow, next week, next year, and in 10 years. And that's the way you want to think about it. So I hope this episode helps you with a different way of looking at aging, a better definition, and with some applicable tools so that you too can live better with age. This is Dr. Geo signing off. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Dr. Geo podcast. You can watch all episodes of this podcast and much more by subscribing to my YouTube channel on youtube.com/Geo Espinoza ND. If you love what you heard today, you can help by leaving a 5-star review of the podcast on Apple and Spotify, as each review helps us reach more men who are serious about improving their urological health and how to function better with age. And for the latest research and actionable takeaways in the world of men's health and integrative urology, sign up for my newsletter at drgeo.com. I'll see you next time.